The envelope sat on her kitchen table for 3 days before she opened it. Captain Rachel Morgan, former Captain Rachel Morgan, had learned not to trust mail from strangers. 10 years since the court-martial. 10 years since the headlines. 10 years since the day they stripped her rank and told her she was a disgrace to the uniform. She'd stopped reading letters a long time ago. Too many from people who wanted to tell her she was wrong. Too many from people who wanted to tell her she was right. Both hurt in different ways. But this envelope was different. The handwriting was careful, almost childlike. The return address was a city she'd never heard of, somewhere in the Midwest. And at the bottom, in small letters, "Thank you for my life." She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of notebook paper, folded twice. The handwriting was the same, neat, deliberate, like someone who'd written this letter many times in their head before putting pen to paper. Dear Captain Morgan, my name is Ahmed Khalil. You don't know me, but you saved my life 10 years ago. I was 8 years old. You probably don't remember me. You saved 30 people that day. But I remember you. I'm in medical school now. I'm going to be a doctor. Because of you, I get to save lives too. Thank you. Rachel's hands shook. The paper blurred. She set it down on the table and stared at it, like it might disappear if she looked away. 10 years. 10 years of wondering if she'd made the right choice. 10 years of carrying the weight of that decision like a stone around her neck. And now, this. But this story doesn't start with a letter. It starts with a radio call, a burning village, and a decision that would cost Rachel Morgan everything. Afghanistan, 2013. Forward Operating Base Sentinel. The air was thick with dust and heat, the kind that made your lungs feel like sandpaper. Captain Rachel Morgan sat in the command tent, staring at a map covered in red marks, enemy positions, civilian settlements, no-go zones. She was 32 years old, 7 years in the Army, 2 deployments, a reputation for being calm under pressure, good with logistics, better with people. She'd earned her rank the hard way, no shortcuts, no favors, just work. Her commanding officer, Colonel Davidson, stood across the table from her. 53 years old, silver hair, hard eyes that had seen too many wars. He was pointing at a village on the map, Kala Anau, a small settlement about 12 kilometers north of the base. Intel says there's Taliban activity in the area. The village is off limits. We don't have the resources to clear it, and we're not risking American lives for civilians who might be harboring insurgents. Rachel frowned. Sir, we've had reports of wounded civilians, women and children. A mortar hit the edge of the village 3 days ago. Not our problem, Captain. Davidson's tone didn't change. Our mission is force protection and strategic operations. Humanitarian aid is not in our mandate. The village is a potential hot zone. We stay out. She looked back at the map. Kala Anau. Population maybe 200. Farmers, families, and now, according to local sources, at least 30 people wounded from a stray Taliban mortar. Sir, if we don't help them... That's an order, Captain Morgan. The village is off limits. Do you understand? She looked up at him. His face was stone. No room for argument. No room for compassion. Yes, sir, she said quietly, but she didn't mean it.
That night, Rachel lay awake in her bunk. The other officers were asleep. Outside, the generator hummed. She could hear the distant sound of helicopters, routine patrol, probably. She kept thinking about the village, about the reports she had read. 30 wounded, no medical supplies, no way to get help, just sitting there, 12 kilometers away, bleeding out while the army looked the other way. She thought about her father, a cop, retired now. He'd always told her the same thing. The badge doesn't make you right, Rachel. Your conscience does. At 0400 hours, she made her decision. She got up, put on her uniform, grabbed her medical kit, woke up Sergeant Hayes, a medic she trusted, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. She said, "We're going to Kala Anau." Hayes looked at her like she'd just told him they were flying to the moon. "Ma'am, the colonel said—" I know what he said. Her voice was calm. Not angry, just certain. But there are 30 people dying 12 kilometers from here, and we have the ability to help them, so we're going. Hayes stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yes, ma'am. They took a Humvee. No convoy, no air support. Just 2 soldiers and a medical kit driving into a village that was officially off limits. The sun was just starting to rise when they arrived. The village was small. Mud brick houses, narrow dirt roads, a single well in the center, and everywhere the smell of smoke and blood. They found the wounded in a makeshift clinic, really just someone's house with the furniture pushed aside. 30 people, men, women, children, some with shrapnel wounds, some with burns, some barely breathing. Rachel and Hayes worked for 6 hours straight, bandaging wounds, setting broken bones, administering antibiotics, saving lives. One of the wounded was a boy, 8 years old, shrapnel in his leg. His mother was crying, holding his hand, begging Rachel in broken English, "Please, please save him." Rachel looked at the boy. He had dark eyes, terrified eyes, the kind of fear you shouldn't see in a child. She said, "I've got you. You're gonna be okay." She removed the shrapnel, cleaned the wound, wrapped it tight. The boy cried, but he lived. His mother kissed Rachel's hands over and over, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, thank you." Rachel didn't know the boy's name, didn't know that he'd carry that moment with him for the rest of his life, didn't know that 10 years later he'd write her a letter. All she knew was that she'd done the right thing. When they got back to base, Colonel Davidson was waiting.
The court-martial happened fast, too fast, like they wanted it over before anyone could ask too many questions. The charges: disobeying a direct order, unauthorized use of military resources, conduct unbecoming an officer. The courtroom was cold, sterile. A panel of 5 officers sat behind a long table, their faces blank, their uniforms perfect. Rachel sat alone at a smaller table, her lawyer beside her, a young JAG officer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The prosecutor stood, a major, thin, sharp-eyed. He looked at Rachel like she was something dirty he'd found on his shoe. "Captain Morgan," he began, his voice crisp and formal, "you were given a direct order by your commanding officer. You disobeyed that order. You took military equipment without authorization. You endangered yourself and Sergeant Hayes by entering a hostile zone. Do you deny any of this?" Rachel looked at him. "No, sir, I don't deny it." "Then you admit you committed insubordination?" "I admit I disobeyed the order, yes, sir." The prosecutor smiled. Not a friendly smile, a victory smile. "And why did you disobey the order, Captain?" Rachel took a breath. "Because 30 people were dying, sir, and I had the ability to save them." "That wasn't your mission." "No, sir, it wasn't. Your mission was force protection, strategic operations, not humanitarian aid." "Yes, sir." "So you prioritized civilians, foreign nationals, potential enemy combatants over the safety and discipline of your unit." Rachel's jaw tightened. "I prioritized human lives, sir." The prosecutor turned to the panel. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about compassion. This is about discipline. This is about the chain of command. If every officer decided which orders to follow based on their personal feelings, we wouldn't have an army. We'd have chaos." He turned to Rachel. "Captain Morgan, you may believe you're a hero, but heroes don't break the rules. Heroes follow them." Rachel didn't respond. What could she say? He was right, in a way. She had broken the rules. She had disobeyed orders. She had put herself and Hayes at risk. But she'd also saved 30 lives. The panel deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, their faces told her everything she needed to know. "Captain Rachel Morgan," the lead officer said, his voice flat and formal, "this panel finds you guilty of insubordination and conduct unbecoming an officer. You are hereby stripped of your rank and dishonorably discharged from the United States Army, effective immediately." The room was silent. Rachel stood, took off her captain's bars, placed them on the table, and walked out.
10 years. 10 years of living with that decision. 10 years of working at a veterans clinic, helping people who couldn't afford doctors, trying to make up for something she wasn't even sure she'd done wrong. People recognized her sometimes. Some thanked her, some called her a traitor. Most just looked away. She'd stopped wearing anything that identified her as former military, stopped going to reunions, stopped talking about it. Until the letter. Rachel sat at her kitchen table reading Ahmed's letter for the 10th time. She'd looked him up online. Ahmed Khalil, 23 years old, medical student at a university in Ohio. His profile picture showed a young man with dark eyes and a warm smile, the same eyes that had looked at her with terror 10 years ago. She wrote back. A short letter, just a few lines. Thank you for writing. I'm glad you're okay. Good luck with medical school. A week later, another letter arrived. This one was longer. Ahmed told her about his life, about how his family had moved to the U.S. as refugees, about how he worked 3 jobs to pay for college, about how he'd chosen medicine because of her. You showed me that saving lives is the most important thing. Not rules, not orders, just helping people who need it. Rachel started crying again, but this time they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of relief. A month later, Ahmed drove 6 hours to meet her. He showed up at the veterans clinic where she worked, carrying flowers and a nervous smile. "Captain Morgan?" he said quietly. She looked at him, saw the boy from 10 years ago, saw the man he'd become. "Just Rachel," she said. They talked for hours about the village, about the court-martial, about what it meant to do the right thing when the right thing gets you punished. "Do you regret it?" Ahmed asked. Rachel thought about it. About the rank she'd lost, about the career that ended, about the 10 years of doubt. "No," she said finally. "I don't." Ahmed smiled. "Good, because I'm going to be a doctor now, and I'm going to save lives, because of you." Rachel looked at him, at this young man who existed because she'd broken the rules, who would go on to save dozens, maybe hundreds of people, because she'd made one choice on one day. And she realized something. The court-martial had called her a disgrace. The army had called her a traitor. But this young man, this doctor-to-be, he called her a hero. And maybe that was the only verdict that mattered. 5 years later, Rachel received another letter. This time it was an invitation. Ahmed was graduating from medical school. He wanted her to be there. She went. Sat in the crowd, watched as Ahmed walked across the stage in his white coat, holding his diploma, smiling like he'd won the lottery. After the ceremony, he found her, introduced her to his family. His mother recognized her immediately, fell into her arms crying, thanking her over and over in broken English. Ahmed's younger sister was there too. She'd been 4 years old that day in the village. She didn't remember Rachel, but she knew the story. "You saved my brother," she said quietly. "Thank you." Rachel looked at Ahmed, at his family, at the life that continued because she'd made one choice. "You're welcome," she said. Because sometimes the right thing isn't the legal thing. Sometimes doing what's right means breaking the rules. Sometimes being a hero means being called a disgrace. And sometimes, just sometimes, the people you save grow up to save others. That's the legacy that matters.